That,
But how come?
I don't know.
And you look
Because
great.
we're important.
Really?
and you're not.
Yeah.
Want to see my scar?
Yeah.
Look at this thing. So,
Oh.
you know what happened?
No.
Oh.
See that thing? Yeah.
That's a badass scar.
You could tell people you got shot there, and they wouldn't believe you.
Yeah.
I should tell people I got shot there while I was defending some maid's honor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But people would be like, "Well, you would never do that."
Yeah, they would.
I know
Probably
you're
her
full of it.
boyfriend shot you, but.
Maybe picking up that girl.
Yeah.
And then the boy came.
Yeah. I broke my collarbone skiing at Alta.
Yeah.
During
Like day 1, 2?
day 2.
Day 2.
Yeah, I got 2 at the end of day 2. I got 2 really good days of skiing, and then my last words to my friend Ruben were, "Man, I got this powder down. This mountain is mine." We skied all day.
And the mountain heard you.
Oh my God! And then I started
Oh,
somersaulting, right? And I heard crunching happening in my body,
my
and I
gosh.
kept somersaulting, and it kept hitting this exact same shoulder.
So when you got like that final land,
Yeah,
what was that thought like? Were
Yeah.
you afraid to
Can I-
move anything? Like,
I thought I was gonna poop my pants. Like I thought it hurt so bad.
Oh, it did? Okay.
I thought I
You
was gonna
weren't numb
lose
at that-
control of bodily functions, and my friend Ruben was maybe like 100 feet below me. I go. You have to call ski patrol, but I may poop my pants before they get here. So let's wait for a few minutes, right, and see what happens. So some skiers came past us, and we called ski patrol, and one of whom was a beautiful woman. So I'm really glad I didn't lose control of my bodily functions before then. And yeah, I was that guy that got sled down the mountain on a sled by ski patrol that I used to make fun of all the time. And we get to the bottom, and yeah, and the doctor at the bottom said we usually just put people in a sling. The collarbone, little tidbit, fun fact, is the most broken bone in your body. Did you know that? But this particular break, he said, "I'm calling my friend, and we are going to get you emergency surgery because this broke in 2 places, and it was like sticking up through the. It was.
Oh my God.
It was bad. It was bad news.
Your hospital gown pick with the thumbs up was my favorite
Thank you.
pick of
Yeah.
ever.
Yeah, it was bad. All right, we're rolling, by the way, boys and girls.
Oh.
Yeah. Did you have a good couple of weeks in my absence?
I did,
Molly
yeah.
Devlin?
When Alex is away, we all play. And,
Your New Year's, I know, was fun and exciting, and broadcast live on Facebook.
No, that was Priest Family Christmas.
Oh, that was?
Yeah.
You guys were wasted.
Who
Who was singing? Who was that? No, there was somebody else.
Jen, and then John got up for a little bit. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Anything eventful happen in your guys' life for the last 3 weeks?
I don't think so.
No?
No, it was
Chill.
calm and chill, and even Christmas, we went out to dinner Christmas Day, which we've never, ever done.
Did you go to a Chinese restaurant?
No, we went to Mitchell's Fish Mart.
Really? They were open on Christmas Day?
They were about the only ones in the world, other than the Chinese.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was,
I used to have a boss who was married on Christmas Eve, and that's how they celebrated their wedding anniversary. Every year was to go to a Chinese restaurant.
Chinese
Yeah.
restaurant. Yeah. No.
If you go to a Chinese restaurant on Christmas, you're guaranteed to be surrounded by Jews. Did you know that?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
You can do a little social experiment next year.
Okay.
You'll see a lot of Jews there.
All right. Yeah,
Like
John had the
people go.
flu, and so it was just Emily and I. It was very laid back.
Lovely.
Very laid back.
We should introduce our guest, Molly
Yes.
Devler.
Yes.
Brenda Cain.
Brenda Cain is in the
C-A-I-N.
house.
Not like candy cane or cocaine.
No.
No, but I
Brenda
did
Cain.
go by Candy Cane a lot. And
Oh.
that was my
In
elementary
your
school.
strip-
Everybody called me Candy Cane.
Oh, I thought you were going to say in my stripper days.
The
Sorry
first
to disappoint.
5 minutes, and we already got that kind of
Wow.
tidbit. I love
We can
it.
call it a day now.
Yeah.
We just got...
Candy cane.
Interesting.
I love it. Because you red hair?
Yes.
Oh.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Love it, love it, love it. So Brenda and I came across each other 3 years ago when I first started my job at the chamber, and she was on the beat of
People
That's
stay
right.
the beat, right?
She was on
People
the
still
beat.
say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
of the Chagrin Valley, and she did it amazingly. So she would always come to the chamber to get,
Get the dirt.
the dirt, get the scoop. She'd
Yeah.
come to and then it was love at first sight.
And this is on the beat for Cleveland.com, yes?
Correct.
Yeah.
As opposed to the Plain Dealer, even though they're affiliated, is that true?
We're owned by the same company,
Right.
but we're different operations.
Okay.
So
And you've never worked for the Plain Dealer
have
side
not.
of the house?
Have not.
Okay. Is that deliberate?
I'm sure the folks at Cleveland.com would say
Okay.
yes. But some of my things have been printed in the Plain Dealer. If,
Okay.
The Plain Dealer has the opportunity to take from us
Yeah.
whatever they feel is important stuff, and so I've had a couple, I think.
So, and feel free to, if answering this question threatens your job at all, then don't answer it. But I wonder if the people in print media and the people in online media are at war with each other, because print media seems to be on the decline because of online media's sort of pushing it out, or no?
Well, I started my career in print media, so I would say, is there a war? No, not by folks with me, but the Plain Dealer. I mean, they've had a lot of changes. They've lost a lot of folks over there over the last few years, and they're still doing great work. But yeah, I think there's some resentment on their part.
Yeah.
So.
But probably not for Cleveland.com because they own it. I mean, they were smart. They grew
Right.
they saw
Well-
it happening, and then they acquired an internet company, right? So they have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, but I think that people in print media, right, generally, who have, made a career out of print media,
Right.
generally feel threatened by online media. Do you think that's true?
Possibly. I think, there's a situation where we can publish faster.
Yeah.
We can publish while something's happening,
Right.
actually. We have that ability. They have to wait till tomorrow morning for you to see it with them. So,
Yeah.
but media is changing, and more people, if you look at statistics right now, more important people actually get their news from their iPhones
Sure.
than they do even from television news and radio.
Well, look, and a bunch of newspapers have folded. Like 100-year-old newspapers all over the country have gone away because of online news, right?
Yes.
And in a minute, I want to talk about fake news. So remember to come back to that. But this one day, I was at the mall downtown at Tower City, and they were giving away Plain Dealers, and there was this older fellow there who had worked for the Plain Dealer for like 100 years, right? And he was trying to get people to subscribe to the newspaper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I read everything on Cleveland.com. And he goes, he got so mad at me, right? He got so upset. He goes, "You kids," right? And then I go, "All right, here, what's your best argument for why I should read my news in paper form rather than on my iPhone?" Right? I go, "If you can convince me with one good argument, then I will consider it and maybe even subscribe right now." And you know what his best argument was? And this is why the Plain Dealer should be very careful about who they put in Tower City, right, speaking for them. His best argument was, well, in online news, when they get it wrong, who you going to sue?
You can still sue us.
Yeah, you can still sue. I mean, it's still, defamation is defamation. And I told him, I go, "Man, I'm a lawyer. right? I will sue whoever defamed me, right? Whoever gets it wrong and I rely on it, I'm going to sue that guy. I go, you haven't convinced me. I'm going to stick to Cleveland.com.
Well, thank you for
Nice,
that.
yeah.
But, yeah,
And
job
Brenda Cain in
security.
particular.
Yes.
Job security, but I have to tell you that I'm still an old-fashioned girl. I still subscribe because at least, especially on Sundays, I want that big old newspaper and I want to feel the page and I want to have to go wash my hands from newsprint, but I want to go through it and I want to read it at my leisure and I want to do the crossword puzzle. You can't do those things on Cleveland.com. So
It's a feeling it gives you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I still like books. When I read a book, I still read on tablets and e-readers, but I still want to turn the page and I still want to have that tactile.
Molly doesn't know what you're talking about right now because she doesn't
No,
read
that's
books.
On my list. You'll be happy to know that's on my resolution
It's
list.
like, what are
to
books?
Read one book this year.
Really? Is that true?
Yeah.
Is that a real New Year's resolution?
Yes.
Can we give you a list of books that you should read?
Yeah. Come on.
No, I think it's going to be Larry Morrow's book. I'm going to actually finish that.
Is he a guest
Awesome
coming up?
book. He is a guest.
Oh,
but
you
it's
should read it before that.
Yeah, he's a great. There's lots of stories there. But back to this one.
Yeah.
Because she's badass.
I know that she's badass. And I know that you're badass in a NASCAR kind of way,
Uh-huh.
right?
Not because she just likes it.
Right. But because she lived it
Lived
and
it.
wrote about it.
Yes.
And
For
I
years.
think that there were probably some illicit affairs there with some NASCAR drivers that we're going to find out about at this podcast for the first time.
Come on,
There's going to be
Candy
a
Cane.
scoop.
They never knew Candy
Oh,
there.
I'm sure they did. They were calling you that.
No. I had a different nickname there.
Oh my goodness.
10 minutes in and we got the second nickname.
Wow.
Red.
Is that true?
Red.
Was there a real second nickname there?
There is a second nickname, but
Can you share it?
It came from my dad. He used to call me Kit. I was
Kit?
his kitten. So.
Oh, okay.
Oh, but that falls into like Kit Car and NASCAR.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking
yeah,
Knight Rider.
Yeah.
All right, talk
So,
about
yeah.
NASCAR.
Well, let's talk about. Can we go? Are we just going to go backwards?
We can
Let's
go
go
in any
backwards
order.
because we started. So let's go backwards. And
That's
then
fine.
Because I'm interested on how she began that journey in journalism.
Backwards
But-
from today, you're saying? Or?
Well, we did because we started with Cleveland.com, so I guess
All right.
we're moving backwards.
So before Cleveland.com, you're
Yeah. So what was
Reverse-
that NASCAR?
No, actually I worked for Victor Schreckendust, who was the father of industrial design. I was his PR agent the year that he turned 100 years old. And he's a pretty cool dude. If you don't know about Victor, look him up because he's amazing. He's a local Ohio artist, started out doing pottery for Cowan Pottery that's now defunct. It was on the west side. And one day got a commission. They didn't know who it was from. The commission was to create a punch bowl with a New York 20s theme. And so he created one, sent it off, and got a note back that said, "Thanks, I think this will work perfectly for Franklin's inauguration." And the commission came from Eleanor Roosevelt. And the punch bowl
Wow,
was
I
used
got
at
chills.
Franklin D's inauguration party. So,
You said he's the father of what kind of design?
industrial design.
Industrial design.
Yeah, so,
Which doesn't really have anything to do with punch bowls.
not punch bowls,
At
no.
some point, he went from punch bowls to industrial
Yeah,
design.
he
We started
started
in
in
pottery.
pottery. He's designed tons of dinnerware that some of those designs are still out there. But he's designed things like the Schwinn bicycles in the 40s and 50s.
Is that right?
He pedal cars. I know you guys had a pedal car when you were growing up.
I did,
He
for sure.
created a
but-
pedal car.
Big wheels.
He created them.
Huh.
So
Is he still alive?
He is not. He died in 2012.
Wow.
Wouldn't be a very good podcast guest.
How old would he, if you celebrate his 100, how old was he when he passed?
He was 103 when he
Wow.
passed away.
What did you do for Victor Schreckengast?
I was his PR agent, and that year, because it was his 100th, we were trying to get him the National Medal of the Arts, which is only bestowed by the President of the United States, and it's never been bestowed posthumously. So we started trying to do things that would get the White House's attention. We had 50 consecutive or concurrently running exhibits in all 50 states of his work.
Wow.
We did all kinds of crazy things, but the thing that actually got George W. Bush's attention was we started a grassroots phone campaign to call the White House and tell the president that Victor needed to have the National Medal of the Arts, and we crashed the switchboard. So that was...
And that was because Victor really wanted this award?
No, because we wanted him to have that award. I mean, the man is a giant. I mean, he actually taught at the Cleveland Institute of Art. He taught the man who designed the Ford Mustang. He taught John Nottingham and John Spurk, who own Nottingham and Spurk. It's a local design firm. They've created things like the Dirt Devil vacuum cleaner and the spin brush toothbrush and things like that. So he planted the seeds for those things with those men, and we felt that he never got the recognition. He was just someone that no one's heard of.
So, and how long did you work for him?
A year and a half.
And how many people did it take to crash the switchboard? I've got a couple things I'd like to get on the agenda.
I don't know how many calls they got. We just got a nasty call from the White House that said, call them off, make them stop calling. We can't handle it anymore. So we had to put out the word to...
So did he get it?
He did get it,
Okay,
yes. He did get it. So
did you go to the White House?
I was not allowed to go to the White House. Only the family was allowed to go with him. So
Gotcha.
How cool is that?
So was NASCAR before Victor?
NASCAR was before Victor, yes.
All right, so talk to us about NASCAR.
What do you want to know?
You were
Are they
a
fast?
reporter. I was a reporter
for
here
NASCAR.
in Cleveland. To go all the way back, I was a reporter here in Cleveland, and we used to have something at Burke Lakefront Airport called the Budweiser Cleveland Grand Prix.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
It was an IndyCar race. Well, I at the time was working for the newspaper here, and was trying to get. I was doing all the negotiations to bring it here, which was all very boring business stories, and ask the sports reporter when the race was finally awarded to Cleveland if I could cover the race. And, he was kind of grumpy about the whole idea of a woman doing sports. At the time, it was 1984. And he made me a bet. If I could go down there when the race teams moved into Cleveland and find a woman in a significant position with a race team, he would let me cover the race.
There's got to be a lawsuit there. No?
Well, this was 1984. So
Gosh.
I went down and found a woman who built engines for a team and did a feature story on her and got to cover the first race.
This was for which?
This was for the Sun newspapers.
Sun newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also a collaborative.
Also part of Advanced Ohio Now.
Yes.
Yes.
It's like more like a community newspaper.
Yeah, it's a weekly newspaper.
Okay, got it.
So shortly after that, my husband lost his job, and he eventually found a job in Charlotte, North Carolina. And we moved there, and I went to the paper looking for a job because I didn't have a job when we moved. And they were looking at my clips and saw my stuff with the race and thought, Charlotte is the hub of NASCAR. Yeah. Everybody thinks it's Daytona, but all the teams are centered, 90% of them are centered in Charlotte. So they saw my stuff, and NASCAR was trying to be a little more mainstream at the time, and they thought, it could be interesting to have a woman on the beat, and so they made me a NASCAR reporter. And I did that for about a year and a half, and NASCAR decided, the sanctioning body decided that they needed a woman to represent the sport, so I became a PR agent for NASCAR.
were you already into NASCAR at that time?
Yeah, I grew up with it. My dad
Really?
was a huge racing fan, so
Huh.
I grew up going to dirt tracks in West Virginia.
Man, I can't figure NASCAR out.
No.
I really can't. You kept that job for
10 years.
10 years.
And what does a day in the life of a PR for NASCAR do?
Well, for me, it was a lot of talking to reporters to find out what they were interested in and trying to arrange interviews for them and get them together with drivers. If I knew of a great story, trying to get their attention and get that story planted in a publication. Race weekends are a whole nother animal.
Yes.
You're at the racetrack
The animal we don't
at
get.
6 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
and you're there until whenever.
And what was the buzz like about you being a woman? Were there times where, since we are talking about the 1800s, aren't we?
Yeah, something like that.
Were there people that dismissed you? Were there people that weren't taking you seriously? Or did the drivers take you seriously? I mean, that's a pretty
Old
colorful,
Yeah.
old school type of people.
In the beginning, it was really hard. My first driver that took me seriously and would talk to me, he was just coming along in NASCAR too. He was a rookie that year. And he was the only guy who would talk to me for a while. And so I did a lot of work with him. And once I started getting him attention, the other guys started, it's like, wait a minute, how come the rookie's getting stories placed in the newspaper and we're not? So then they started taking me seriously. The hardest part were the wives and the girlfriends because they
Sexy
saw
candy canes
they
walking
saw
around
a
and
woman as a threat, you know,
uh-huh.
because most of the women in the garage area were a wife, a girlfriend, or someone who had designs to become a wife or a girlfriend. So
Gotcha.
Interesting.
it took
Yeah.
a hard time to get them to understand that I was there for business reasons. And
Right. Well, they're more worried or thinking about the girls that pop open the champagne and sit on the cars at the
Yeah.
end.
Mhm.
Those are
Miss
the that's,
Winston.
yeah, that's the kind of girl I'm thinking about here. But 1983, I think Candy Cane was probably. And we know she has a nickname, so that we haven't heard about yet.
I think Brenda is already regretting sharing that nickname.
Yeah. So much for the friendship, Mom.
Hey, Brenda, is there, what's Formula One racing versus NASCAR, right?
Mhm.
Formula One has faster cars, right?
Absolutely.
And is more like European?
It's more European. There's a ton more money in that sport.
Yeah.
So they have a lot more leeway when it comes to R&D. And, NASCAR it started out as stock cars. I mean, the name is totally that they could go down to the Ford dealer and buy a used car and soup it up and go race it on Saturday night. So while the cars now still look like they would if you went down to your local dealership, the insides are completely changed. They have like 800 horsepower now.
Right.
And do they have to get their own sponsor?
Yes.
Like, so the car is responsible for getting
The team.
Trojan to
Yeah.
back them,
Mhm.
or what? I was just
Yeah.
throwing that one out.
Get your mind out of the gutter, Molly.
Actually,
That would be a big
that
one.
one did do.
That and Red Bull.
Only did a couple of races back in the '80s, and because they were trying to become more mainstream, that kind of got
See, I know my
kicked right out of the sport. You got lucky, Mo.
There's, I know that there's a lot of controversy and drama in NASCAR with a couple of drivers.
Ooh.
Yeah, like every once in a while you hear about some bad boy driver. Like the one dude got killed, right?
Well, there were a lot of them
plenty.
killed.
I mean recently though, didn't like the one guy that got out of his car in a track and called out the other dude and he ran him over.
Yeah, he did die. The question goes back to
Should you get out of your car
what
on a
idiot
NASCAR
would
track?
get out of his car
They must-
Yeah.
Yes.
during a race. There was a lawsuit. There were criminal investigations.
Right.
There was a lawsuit that's still pending about it. But the reality is he got out of the car.
The guy that ran him over got in trouble. Tony Stewart.
Yes.
Didn't he get in trouble for something else after that?
Tony was, he retired at the end of last season. Tony was definitely the old school driver. You know, he would say what he thought, and he just didn't take crap from anybody. I personally kind of like that about him a lot. But yeah, he got into some trouble, but you know, mostly I think that's what ended his career. Really.
Why? What did he say that got him in trouble?
Well, he said a lot of things. I mean, he would criticize the sanctioning body. He would, you know, you don't.
I mean, at the end though, I thought what little I watch about sports in general, but this one, I thought he said something that got him in a lot of trouble. No? Maybe I'm hallucinating. I thought there was like one thing that led to him retiring. No?
I think it was the accident. Because I don't think he ever really got over it. He changed a lot after that.
Gotcha.
So he killed a person.
Yeah.
It's horrible, no matter what the facts are.
Sure.
And what's your favorite interview? Driver?
Dale Earnhardt.
Oh.
Totally Dale Earnhardt. Love Dale Earnhardt. Because Dale was, you know, his nickname was the Intimidator. He totally bought into his own press releases as far as, you know, I'm the baddest cat on the track. You don't screw with me, and you know, you just didn't. And he won everything that there ever was to win. The reality about him was that while he was a tough bird at the track, he was one of the sweetest guys ever. And once he knew that you could be trusted, he just was an incredibly loyal friend. He had tons of money, drove for some of the biggest teams there was, and at the same time, he very silently, there were a couple of guys that were journeyman drivers. They owned their own teams. They were operating on a shoestring, and Dale would make sure that, you know, magically, if they needed a new set of tires, somebody at the track had a set of tires that they didn't need anymore, and they would just magically take them over to that team and say, hey, can you guys use these? And a lot of it was his influence. Because he wanted to see the sport stay strong, and he wanted to help the little guy.
Son is still doing it? Is there a junior?
Yeah, Junior is still driving. He was out most of last year for a major concussion. Actually got married on New Year's Eve.
Oh.
So that was pretty
And
exciting.
it's Danica. Yes,
yeah, Danica Patrick.
Were you around when she was coming up the
I was not.
pike? No.
No.
Okay. Were you excited when she was coming up the pike?
I was. I knew a lot of women who were trying to break into racing as drivers. Never accepted, it was...
What made her different, do you think?
Because she came with credentials. A lot of women, they could have done very well if they'd had the support behind them, but they didn't. Danica came from IndyCar, and she had a lot of good credentials behind her, and she hooked up with a good team, actually drives for the team owned by...
I'm just kidding.
Air quotes
actually
from
drives
for
for
the kids
team
at home.
that's owned by Tony Stewart now.
Oh.
But she has...
I thought you were going to say Trojan.
No.
Oh.
No.
How dare you?
Oh, Brenda knows me.
So 10 years at NASCAR, did you ever go racing?
I have driven before, not in a sanctioned race.
Okay.
But if you work for NASCAR, you go to driving school.
Is that right?
Because if I'm going to tell you what it's like to be behind the wheel, I have to know. So I did get sent to driving school. I did a couple of little, small races.
Interesting. How fast have you ever driven a NASCAR car?
147.
Is that right? Is that scary?
No. It's surprisingly, that all things are relative. When you're on a track, you know what it's like, I'm sure, to drive 80. I know
Never.
you deny that because you're such
I
a
always follow the law.
law-abiding citizen.
Right.
But you know what that's like, but when you can't really tell the difference. It's all relative when you're in the car.
In the course of your tenure at NASCAR, what do you think was the most interesting part of your job, or the most interesting thing that happened during that time?
I think the hardest thing was losing 2 drivers in a very short span that would have been tremendous drivers if they hadn't been killed so early in their careers.
Who were they?
Davey Allison, he was killed in a helicopter crash. And he had just really started to explode onto the NASCAR scene. Was a really great guy. And then Alan Klicki, who was one of our champions, was killed flying into a racetrack.
Isn't that ironic? 2 NASCAR drivers both killed while airborne. Interesting.
Crazy.
So and did you do a lot of writing about those events?
I did.
Yeah.
I did, and it was very hard.
Were you friends with them?
Very hard. I was. Yeah, it's because you work with these guys. It's a really small community of 600 people that travel. In my day, 36 weeks a year. You go on the road and you're just together all the time. So yeah, you get to be really good friends and you know them really well.
Any big scoop you got to expose during your time there?
No.
Are they all?
I was the PR agent, so it wasn't my job to
Gotcha, that's
expose
right,
the
that's
scoop.
right. But
But I'll tell you a secret.
All right.
You want to know a secret?
Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
The secret is that Richard Petty, the king of stock car racing, was, and I'm probably still going to get in trouble for this if NASCAR hears about it, he was actually sponsored by Pepsi Cola. Richard hated Pepsi. So even though it was in his contract to walk around the racetrack carrying a Pepsi can, Pepsi was not in the can. It was my good friend Coca-Cola because we would go out behind his hauler and pour out the Pepsi and fill the can with Coca-Cola.
Well, listen, Brenda, there are a million listeners to this
Yes.
podcast, and among them are going to be top-level
There will
NASCAR
be now.
So they're going to call Daytona, and I'm going to hear from Billy Grant.
Yes, well, Alex will represent you if there's any backlash on that. Wow, that's big.
That is big. I can't stand Pepsi or Coke, so I would have Scotch in mine. I bet, though, conversely, that while doing PR, you had to do damage control sometimes, right?
Yep.
So, think of a time when you had to do damage. Like, what was the biggest piece of damage control that you had to do?
Probably the one that brought around the worst backlash at the time was there was a driver named Rusty Wallace. He was a multiple champion. His little brother was coming along, Mike Wallace, and Mike had a few drinks the night before the race, and there was a woman driver in that race that was going to be in that race, and he made some comments in the bar about taking her out during the race. Now, I don't know that Mike was serious.
Hold on, let's back this up.
Oh.
Taking her out, like...
Not with the Trojan.
No, wrecking her.
Gotcha.
Wrecking her during the race.
Is that right?
Now, we don't know that Mike was serious, but as fate would have it,
Hot Mike.
there was an accident.
Oh.
And Michael was involved with her being taken out of the race. So...
interesting.
Some people had heard that and made comments on it, and the press was all over it. So
Interesting.
we had to make that go away.
A small, you're saying it's a small family. I would have to think, and you spend a lot of time together on the roads, I would have to think there's a lot of having fun with each other, so to speak.
Yeah.
with the Trojans.
That's all we're gonna get out of Brenda.
No, don't go there.
Okay.
Oh, the non-disclosure agreements are working.
Sucks interviewing a
Yeah.
paper person or a journalist with all
Are
these
the-
morals and ethics.
Are there any gay NASCAR drivers?
Not to my knowledge.
Not openly gay?
Not openly.
Well, here's why I asked that question, right? Because I think about courage a lot, and that would like, whenever you hear about a professional athlete coming out of the closet, I think that takes a tremendous amount of courage, because in those locker rooms, it is old school, right? And NASCAR would have like multiple levels of old school associated with it, right? It's not just like any other locker room. It is kind of a good old boy situation. Right?
NASCAR started with the moonshiners running
Yeah,
Shine,
that's right.
North Carolina. So it grew out of that, and
Yeah.
there was a certain toughness that was expected.
Right.
You know, it wants very much to be a family sport.
Yeah.
It's grown because it's worked very hard to be a family sport.
Yeah.
You know, you have generations coming on. I mean, there are drivers now that Dale Jr., I watched him grow up from 8 years old, throwing footballs in the infield with Michael Waltrip, and, you know, now they're racing. Waltrip is actually retired from racing. So, you know, I watch these kids grow up, and they bring their fans with them. They have young parents who have taken their kids to the track. You know?
Would you consider that your big break, when you started with NASCAR?
Yeah, that was, Tim Knight, don't listen to this comment. That was the coolest job I've ever had in my life. I loved every second of it.
And then what brought you to Cleveland? Hubby's job, yes?
Yes.
No. Yes.
Well, we were here and we went away and then we came back. So.
Brenda, you are a writer outside of your professional writing, right? You're working on a book, yes?
Yes.
And we were talking, so Molly, that's the cleaning crew.
I know, I just
Hopefully
did. I was
they're
going to start
not
vacuuming.
very, we'll find out in a second how this plays out. I have designs on a book myself, but can't seem to get past the getting off your ass phase. So I picked Brenda's brain for like an hour at the bar once, and found out that Brenda's working on a book, and there's a NASCAR angle to it, right?
Yeah,
Am
you
I
write
allowed-
what you know.
Right, you write what you know, and at that time it was 700. You were up to 700 pages,
Yes.
Right.
Couldn't seem to end it.
right?
Couldn't seem to end it.
And
Usually it's the opposite sometimes, no, where people can't begin.
yeah.
And Brenda can't end.
But
so
it
much
is-
scoop.
But now it's shorter than that, because you
Yeah.
seem to have done what I think is the hardest part of writing, if I knew anything about writing, which would be cutting out your own work, right? Editing it down. So how many pages is it now?
It's now down to 493.
Which is still crazy.
Still crazy.
That's, you know what, that's 493 more pages than Molly's ever read in a book in her life.
Well, maybe 490.
Since high school, anyway. Since English class.
90. I would read her book, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well,
I'd be
so-
first one in line for the book.
So where's that? When are we going to see Brenda Cain at Barnes and Noble?
Fireside Books.
Is that still
Yeah, Fireside.
Fireside? That's
Well, I
right.
mean, not this is local, just the
Yeah,
local
no, I
aspect
know,
of
I
it.
know.
Yes.
Is Barnes and Noble still around?
Yes.
They are,
Yeah,
right?
there's one down my case.
Amazon
Doesn't
hasn't
matter.
put them out of business yet.
No, that's sad too. I used to love bookstores, but anyway.
I still do. Yeah.
Fireside Books.
I have found myself a local author and writer who has been willing to mentor me, and she's worked very hard with me. And so we're still working. Obviously, I can't put out a book that's 500 pages, but nobody's gonna read it. So we're working on it.
You've been working on it for how long?
longer than I care to admit. Actually, I wrote it a long time ago. Started when I was in NASCAR. Took a long time off to be a mom, and then when he went away to college, I got it out and started playing with it again. So it's been a while.
I admire you, man. I have so much respect for someone who can get up to 493 pages, much less 700, and then get it back down to that much. That is such a labor of love, right? I mean, and I also know I've started a lot of books. I've started a lot of short stories. I've finished a couple of short stories that will never see the light of day. And I know the psychology and the torment and the agony, I think, or maybe it's just me, but for me, that's what it was, right? And there's self-doubt, there's...
well, then you're editing your own words, so the words that are, you're like, but that line's so important to me, but yet your muse might be saying, well, it's not important to the book, but you're like, but no, that's so important, and I would assume there's a big struggle.
The hardest part was I started with, the book started with this very, I don't know, very happy little scene of, well, the book's about racing, so it starts with this guy bringing his first race car home, and bouncing along the road that ran along the river, which that road actually exists in North Carolina, but and then it goes to the racetrack, and it's a very difficult scene where he's in a bad accident, he wakes up in the hospital, and the first time my mentor read the book, she went, what is this happy little scene, get rid of that, and I was thinking, no, wait.
That's my favorite one.
That sets it up, that tells you who he is, and she's like, no, it doesn't, get rid of it, and so those 3 pages were the hardest thing to just, it was like ripping out a little piece of your heart. So.
Well, and the biggest struggle for me has always been this tension between writing something that I think other people would find interesting enough to keep reading and being true to that voice, right, inside of you, which wants to write something that may not be interesting, right? And I'm constantly, not just in writing, but in anything, thinking, like, on one shoulder, on my bruised shoulder, right, is that little dude that says, it just doesn't matter what other people think, right? If it seems right, and it's part of your values, and it is intuitive to you, right, then do it. And it doesn't matter what anyone thinks. But writing is one of those things where, I guess you kind of have to care what other people think. You kind of have to, you want people to read.
You'd like to make money.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But at the same time, you hear constantly that you can't write to get published. You have to write because you love writing. Mm-hmm. You have to write because the craft appeals to you. And because it's something, because it's going to take a lifetime, right? It's going to take so much of your effort and your emotional energy and your psychic energy and your time that you can't be writing for other people. You've got to be writing because it's something that you love to do with a passion, right? So that's always been the tension for me. I sometimes get stuck on a page where I get like schizophrenic about it, and I'm like, is this something that other people will enjoy, and do I care, or am I selling myself out so that other, you know what I mean? Or is that
deep. Super deep.
Is that the sellout alarm? No, but do you know what I mean?
I do.
Does that make sense?
And there's 1,000 stories of the great authors of this earth that had that same struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, F. Scott Fitzgerald, who is my all-time favorite author, I mean, he wrote his first book and sent it off to, 10 or 12 publishing firms and had them all sent back.
Right.
And he was devastated. There comes a point where the way I, choose to interpret what Fitzgerald said later, there comes a point where it's like alcoholism. The alcoholic has to decide, do I want to keep drinking or do I want to be clean and have this whole other life? And, the only person who can choose is the alcoholic. And Fitzgerald thought that his first novel was a masterpiece, and it was rejected. And what changed his mind was the realization that he would never have anything published if he didn't change that book. So he went away and literally locked himself away for a year, rewrote the book, sent it back, and it became an instant bestseller. So, he was the alcoholic who had to decide what's more important to me,
Right.
writing for my soul or, having my work see the light of day.
What are you, when you are writing your book, are you thinking more about getting published, or are you thinking about not, does that come into your awareness?
Now I am.
Yeah.
I'm getting older. I'd like to leave something for posterity, as it were, besides, some happy little story that I wrote for, the Chagrin Soul and Son or whatever. Yeah, there's this realization. It was always a goal. It was something that I always hoped to do. So, but now, as I get older, it's more important to me to see it through and have somebody actually read it and appreciate it.
Interesting. Do you ever read that book, Confederacy of Dunces? As a courtesy, I'll ask you.
Why are you even looking at me?
First of all, it's an amazing book. It's absolutely amazing. It was written by a guy named John Kennedy O'Toole, or Toole, I forget if there's an O apostrophe there, but he committed suicide before it was published. He wrote it. He suffered from depression, obviously, and no one knows whether he wrote it with the intent of publishing it, because his mother, while she was cleaning out his attic after he died, found this manuscript and sent it in. And if you want to get like meta, right, about this very question, right, who do you write for? That book really captures it well. He, anyway, so she found it and she sent it in, and it turned into, it was a huge sensation. And I actually, just as an aside, I was reading it in Iraq, right? I read this book, somebody had sent it to me, like somebody sent it in a care package. And I read it, and I couldn't understand it. It was hilarious when I was reading it. You laugh out loud when you're reading it, but I couldn't figure out what the point of the book was at all. And when I finished it, I was so confused that I went back and I outlined it, right? And then a light bulb went off, and I totally got it, right? And when you outline that book, you see you see the I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I really recommend that you read it. It's really amazing. But you see what had to have been his struggle, right, in writing it and deciding, I think, whether he was writing it for the purpose of publishing it or just writing it because he wanted to write and write well. It's fascinating, and it's hysterical. It is absolutely hilarious. Confederacy of Dunces. When do you think that your book will be finished?
I'm probably looking at another year.
Yeah?
Because I'm a part-time writer.
Yeah.
I don't. So there are days after writing, a long day of writing at work, I come home and don't want to face it. So there are times when, I'll go weeks without ever even looking at it.
See, and that's another thing that I have. This is why I can't binge watch any shows.
Oh, I can totally binge watch.
Although I just did that with the Narcos. Have you guys watched Narcos at all?
My son says I shouldn't watch it.
Oh man, it's so good. It's so good.
We were watching Fuller House before.
Fuller House?
Before we got here.
Okay, in the last month, I've done all 4 seasons of House of Cards.
Oh, that's
I
awesome.
love that show.
Oh,
Past
so
first
good.
couple.
So good. So good. Is it coming back?
Yes, in March.
Oh, so good. I just found out Will and Grace is coming back for 10 episodes.
I saw your
That makes me
Facebook post
happy.
about Will and Grace.
Yeah,
You really did them.
you need to just watch one episode. It is the
I agree
funniest
with
show
you.
from beginning to end.
Yeah.
It's not like today's shows where there might be one little scene
Yeah.
that you giggle about. Like from beginning to end, Will and Grace is hysterical. So
I liked
good.
everyone in there except for Grace. I
Oh.
always thought that she was just. I didn't get her at all.
Together.
I liked all the other characters though. But my I have a hard time picking up something that I put down, right? And this is why I like binge watching anything and then putting it down and then coming back to it. I can never do. Same thing for writing. But you're able to stop writing and then pick it up a few weeks later relatively painlessly.
Yeah,
It sounds
you
like.
get a fresh perspective because sometimes you get so close to it that you can't see the flaws.
Yeah.
And if you take a time and walk away and come back, all of a sudden that paragraph that you thought was Pulitzer material all of a sudden is pretty stupid. Why the heck is that there anyway?
Yeah, but you don't have trouble, like, remembering everything you wrote and, you know, or just even looking forward to picking up something that you put down for, like, a month. You don't have any issue.
Mm-mm.
Oh, man, I definitely, I need to work that muscle out. Do you, Molly, ever?
Have problems.
Like, picking something up that you've put down for months, like projects? You know what I mean?
I get the point of remembering.
You can't think of an example?
I don't think Molly ever lets go of anything. She
Yeah.
just, once she gets it, she holds tight and keeps going till she sees it through.
I buy that.
Maybe.
Oh, I had a question. I totally
Your
lost
gift is going to be so perfect to open after this episode. I can't even wait.
My Hanukkah present that
Yes,
you gave me earlier?
yes,
Oh, that's
your
lovely.
Hanukkah present.
I can't wait.
You had a tree. Didn't you tell me you had a tree?
A Hanukkah tree.
And the kids
Yeah.
have visited Santa, so
Yeah.
it could be.
It's
either
really
one.
funny, by the way. I keep showing the picture of us hanging out with Santa
Mm-hmm.
to Maya, to my 3-year-old, and it blows her mind. She's like,
Mm.
"You're friends with Santa?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, because he's not in his full regalia.
Right,
He's
right.
just like in a red T-shirt.
And the video of her brushing her teeth, we watched
Yeah,
it and
pretty
just she was using her brother as a step stool.
Yeah.
At the sink. Oh, that was wonderful, wonderful. And theater, she does stage.
Who? Brenda Cain
Theater,
does?
yes.
Stop it.
Yes,
You do theater?
I'm always behind the scenes.
yes.
My son is the actor. I do costumes and props for a local high school.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do Peter Pan at Sugar and Falls?
I did not. It's not that
Ooh,
local
you would've-
high school.
You would have you missed out on an Oscar-worthy performance
I
from Molly
know.
Gebler.
There was a pirate on stage that was just a shining beacon.
We have
of
it on
light.
DVD, folks. We're gonna do a viewing party at the town hall for all those who missed it.
Oh, I want to be there.
And also was a stage mom this year for her son
I
in a
was.
different way. In
Very
a different
proud
way.
moment. The Chagrin Documentary Film Festival debuted my son's first documentary.
Really?
So, yes.
What was it?
It's called This is Honduras. And
Honduras?
Honduras. As
Honduras.
In the Central
the
American
I know
country.
Honduras, the country.
Yes, yes.
What does he know about Honduras?
Well, in 8th grade, he took his first trip there as a social, a social worker thing with a local organization called, Hope for Honduran Children, and went there and went back 8 times. And then when he was in
Jeez,
college,
I think he knows a few things.
called and said, "I'm not coming home for spring break. I'm going to Honduras and I'm going to shoot a documentary." And we went, "Oh, okay, And he went down and he managed. It was right after the coup. He managed to not only interview the deposed president, but he got the incoming president to sit down with him.
Wow.
And it took him 4 years and a lot of my money to finally produce this thing.
Although you were in the credits.
I was in the credits, yeah.
But what a chip off the old block, right?
Uh-huh.
A journalist interviewing presidents. You must be so proud.
Yeah, but we don't know how he did it. It's like he was a college student. It's like crazy.
Well, he must have had some good connections, presumably.
No, I think he just doesn't know when he can't do something.
Yeah.
So he just plows right through. That's the kind of kid he is.
Yeah,
so.
that's a good quality.
But he is, oddly enough, he leaves next week to go to Standing Rock, shooting some video out there.
That's where they just had that protest over the pipeline.
With the Sioux, yeah.
Yeah, and they won. They won
They won, but the president-elect has not been inaugurated yet, and they're expecting that to be overturned. So
Yeah.
the fight will continue.
Yeah.
So he's going to do some interviews out there, and then in March he leaves for Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan, and
Jeez.
to shoot a documentary on the Syrian refugee crisis.
Wow.
What is his name?
Brandon Jackson.
Brandon Jackson.
And do we see another one coming to the film festival this year? No,
Not this year. No, there won't be time. So, but Marion Ponce, we have something coming your way hopefully next year.
We'll be seeing him at Sundance next year, in addition to the.
Well, Marianne has his
documentary.
loyalty. She will get it first and probably if she gets it first, he won't be at Sundance because Sundance only takes premieres.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Stupid Sundance. I don't know what they're missing.
Right.
All right, Brenda. Lightning round questions.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Biggest success.
Biggest success is my son.
Biggest business success.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we need to have a follow-up question for any time anybody says their kid.
Well, thank you, Brenda. That's in your personal life. What about your business life?
Definitely working for NASCAR. That I said it earlier. It was the coolest job I have ever had, and don't think I can ever eclipse that.
And you got that again by proposing it to your editor before you went down there, right? Isn't that how you got the?
I got the job because I bet the sports director here that I could do the job as a woman covering a sport. They didn't think that was possible.
Okay, that's a good origin story. Yeah, it's a good lesson. Gamble with your boss.
Oh, I thought that was going a different way.
Yeah. What did you think I was going to say?
Don't ask that question. Don't answer that question.
Gamble with your boss.
You guys. All right. Biggest failure.
Biggest failure. Wow, I have a lot of those. Probably, and again, Tim Knight, don't listen to this. Wanting to have my own column at Cleveland.com and so far being shut down.
I vote for that. Not the shutdown part, the own column.
You requested to write your own column at
Yes.
Cleveland.com and you've been shut down?
Yeah.
We're gonna have to do something about that for sure. What kind of column are you allowed to talk about it?
No, I'd rather not.
Oh. What's his name, Tim Knight?
Yeah.
Tim. Give me a
Come
call.
on, Tim.
Come on,
Check
man.
out Restaurant Week last year, man. We rocked that. Brenda rocked it.
That was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. Molly threw me in the car and took me to every restaurant, and we ate at all of them. I was sick as a
were
dog,
queens.
but it was so fun.
Queens at these places.
Did you go on the drinking circuit with all the Burntwoods with Molly too?
We lost Brenda.
Is that right?
I didn't complete the tour.
Oh my goodness.
We got to the last one, I'm like, I feel like we're missing one person. But we were sitting up on the bar at that point, so we didn't.
Maybe that should be my biggest failure.
Or your biggest
She
success?
couldn't finish it with us. Oh, that was a good time. She has a T-shirt to prove it.
I do.
How do you ever have limiting beliefs? And if so, how do you deal with them?
I think I need a definition for limiting beliefs.
The negative voice, the roommate in your head that says, "No, you can't do this.
Oh,
You
yeah.
will fail.
Oh yeah,
You suck."
She's there all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do about it?
Tell her to shut up.
Yeah.
I love
leave me alone. And a lot of positive affirmations and reminding myself of the good things that I have accomplished, and just keep shutting her down as much as I can. But she's there.
Yeah. I have those same techniques. Positive affirmations, visualizing. That's good stuff. And then our friend Molly has a question for you.
Thank you, Alex.
No, Molly. Thank you.
So my question is, did you have an influential woman figure in your life? And if so, how was she impactful for you?
I think it was my high school English teacher.
Mm-hmm.
She introduced me to, F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway and Faulkner and all those guys that...
I think we're going to bleep that one out.
Faulkner? Jeez. You need to read more. But she introduced me to them, and then when I fell in love with the written word, she really encouraged that. So I'd say that I probably have a career because of Mrs. Reed.
And is she here? Is she around?
She's long gone.
Oh, and did she ever get to see where you went?
She knew that I wrote for a newspaper.
Okay.
She saw I sent her
Clippings?
I sent her apparently a lot of clippings when I first got into the business, because I ran into her many, many years later, and she said, "I've enjoyed reading your clips. There are a lot of them." So that's kind of when I quit sending her clips, but yeah, she got to see that I'd eventually wrote in some form.
Sweet.
Lovely. Do we have any more questions for our good friend?
What are you up to
Cain?
next? What's the next plan?
Right now I'm working on the book. Really would like to see that in the next year. That's my big thing. And then just every day going to work at Cleveland.com and figuring out what comes next.
Well, Restaurant Week's June 30th. If you want to go
Okay.
around again with me, I'll line it up.
Let's work on that.
Mhm.
Maybe we could do a Best of Restaurant Week and do
I like
something
it. We have
like
25 this year.
wow.
So
Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun.
that was fun. We'll do something again.
Lovely.
Oh. Now, wait a minute. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
You
Oh.
said we needed to talk about fake news.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
you never
Oh,
came
right.
back.
Yes.
So,
What do you want to know?
I want to know your thoughts on it.
I think that you will defend me, right, when
Yeah.
I say this?
Yeah.
I think that this election has done a lot to give people licenses to do things that weren't acceptable in our society before. And part of that is proliferating a lot of false rumors and just bad information because they think that they can now.
Molly's
you-
getting ready to choke you right now.
No, because we're not talking about politics. Do you think that it's from people like Alex and I just writing something on the internet, or are you talking about actual journalism or journalists that write for something
It's
online?
not coming from journalists.
Okay,
It's coming
because you still
from
have to get fact checked. I mean, just because it's online doesn't give you the right to just write anything you want because it's instant. You still have to I mean, at the end of the day, I know you said that it can be instant,
Mm-hmm.
and I get that because you could be writing it and publishing it right there. But at the end of the day, if there's something incorrect in that article, you're gonna bear that.
Yeah, I'm going to bear it, but I also, as instantly as I publish it, once I realize that there's something wrong, I have the ability to go in and fix it. But a lot of the people that are putting out the false news are doing it because they're angry, because they have an axe to grind, they want to make someone suffer. They're not doing it just because it's fun or it's a job or whatever.
They want to hurt somebody.
They want to hurt someone.
Right.
And that's where I think a lot of it's coming. And, you said we weren't talking about politics. I'm not blaming any one candidate, both sides.
Which, it has always been that way. I mean, if you go back in politics through campaigns,
but it ramped up significantly this time. And that is because of the internet and the ability to be instantaneous.
Right.
So, you know how...
And are you talking fake news in the ability of just anyone doing it?
Yeah, I'm talking about like, not Cleveland.com.
Right, you're talking like Molly News.
Yeah,
Molly News coming out with something and no one even knows who that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And fake news stories specifically from like extreme, sure, on both sides, right?
Right.
But what is interesting to me about it is that this election happened, and the fake news that happened during this election cycle came like several years into this process where, like, you know how Yahoo's really good at this, right? They've got it down to make you read just enough headline to click, right? They know how to get in a critical mass's head to click just to see what the rest of that headline is, or what the next byline or whatever, what the first paragraph is. Like, it's a splashy, visceral, headline that just makes people, that compels them, that urges them to open up that article, right? And that has been going on for years, right? It's been happening for the last 5 years at least, probably longer. I noticed, and I've actually curtailed all of my news watching and my Facebook reading in the last couple months, partly because of this. Those headlines are now the whole point, right? I think, I've got family members of mine who would repost those articles, and they
didn't even read
They never even read it, right? If they had, they would see that it was from The Onion or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But that headline is so compelling, it's so catchy, and you saw it over and over again, all over Facebook all the time.
Well, let me give you a fake news for our viewers, a little PSA that I learned that is not true. Manchester by the Sea is not a good movie. No matter what the reviewers say, it is an hour or two that I will not get out. I've never seen so many people leave the theater, and it has Oscar buzz. So that is fake news,
the
folks.
movie that does have Oscar buzz go see Jackie.
We were thinking of going to see that tonight because it's at Cedar Lee.
Yes.
Yes, and we have a very important guest that will be our speaker for our annual business meeting, who is tied into Jackie. So that's another reason why not to
Amazing film.
As an aside,
yes,
Natalie Portman was she's in that movie, right? She's Jackie. Yeah, she was the woman that I was allowed to cheat with and be totally cool with my wife. She's my hall pass. Yeah, my wife's was George Clooney. Mine was Natalie Portman.
Okay.
In case you guys were wondering.
Well, I have some other reviews really quick.
Yeah.
Why him? Or you're marrying him? Or
why him? Yeah.
Hysterical.
Yeah.
Absolutely funny the whole time.
Interesting.
And the other one we saw was Office Christmas Party.
That had to be hysterical.
It had some parts to it. It wasn't.
Interesting.
It wasn't like the other one that was literally funny all the whole movie with
Why him
James
is
Franco.
funny the whole.
Yes, it's very, very funny,
Interesting.
and it's not that, some of those movies, like Neighbors, it's funny, and then it gets a little twisted. Like
Yeah.
it was funny the whole time.
I saw Rogue One and thought it was one of the greatest movies of all time. Did you guys see Rogue
I
One?
saw
No,
Rogue One.
Did you like it?
I loved it.
I
Yeah.
fell asleep during Star Wars, so I'm not.
Are you
gonna-
kidding?
The original Star
Yeah,
Wars.
the
That's
original at
funny.
the
I've
drive-in.
always fallen asleep during, was that one with Schwarzenegger where he comes back to save
Terminator?
something? Yeah.
Mm.
I've never seen that movie all the way
Yeah.
through. I fall asleep every time.
And saying goodbye to all our people at the end of the last year, end of last week.
Yeah.
George Michael, that hit hard for me.
George
That
Michael
hit
died? I
hard.
didn't know that.
You're
serious?
kidding
I
me.
swear to God. I didn't know he died.
On
You're
Christmas
kidding me.
When did he
Day.
die?
Christmas Day.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Dude,
Oh, is this a?
no, I'm on a media fast. I'm serious. I'm on a total media fast.
Did you look
Are
Facebook
you,
up?
are you
No, I
aware that
I'm aware that Carrie Fisher and her mom
Yes.
died one day
Yeah.
apart,
Yeah,
but
George Michael died
I didn't know that.
right before Carrie Fisher's.
What did he die of?
No, heart attack right now in his bed sleeping. But I watched his concert last night in Paris. I mean,
Interesting.
he was singing other hits. He was singing some great hits. Oh, yeah, that was devastating. Devastating. My mother, believe me, is in the welcoming committee up there. I'm telling you, this is probably like her proudest week. She elbowed people to get on the welcoming committee this past week because those are her people, Carrie Fisher and her mother and George.
Well, we'll see Carrie again in the next movie.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Is that true?
Yeah, no, it was
Yeah.
it was mostly shot before she
Interesting.
passed.
I took the kids to see Moana yesterday. That was really good.
With the pig,
I liked it.
right?
Yeah.
She's a pig.
There's a pig in
We
there.
still have to see Trolls.
Trolls
Still
is
have to see
awesome.
Trolls,
Trolls
yeah.
is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sing, not so much. Was
Really?
not impressed with it. Didn't dig it at all.
How about La La Land? Anyone see that?
Mm-mm.
I know that's on the
I'm waiting
list.
for Hidden Figures.
What's that about?
It's the
Yes.
story of the women
Yes.
who
Oh,
were
yeah.
working behind the scenes, the mathematicians
Oh,
for
NASA.
First Moonshot.
That
Yeah.
looks
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
That looks
That's
great.
right. That does
Yeah.
look good.
Yeah. There's a couple good movies. I want to see Fences with Denzel Washington.
Actually,
That looks good.
Denzel graduated from my son's theater school and came back and taught while he was there. So Brandon
Really?
has had some time
Huh.
learning from Denzel.
Hmm.
Interesting. All right,
Right,
kids.
This is great.
Yeah.
This is great.
Oh, you know what? I wanted to ask you a question. If you had your own podcast and you were interviewing interesting people, and you could only ask them one question, what would it be?
Wow.
I feel we're adding this to the lightning
Where
round.
where do you get your inspiration? Because everyone that I would have as my guest has inspired me in some way. So I want to know what inspires them.
I like that one.
Interesting. Where do you get your inspiration, Brenda?
From people that I know.
Yeah.
You know, there's always, I've been very fortunate in life to always know somebody who has had to face something devastating and not quit. And I think remembering them keeps me going.
I love it. Where do you get your inspiration, Molly?
I think a lot of it comes from being raised by my mom. I would definitely think inspiration and strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I inspire to be like her.
Do you also aspire to be like her?
I aspire, and
That
all
was me, because
all
I was
from
sitting
here
here working
to
very hard at keeping that in and not correcting her, and you did it.
So
he makes fun of me in every podcast.
earlier today.
It was better last week, the podcast.
Why? Because I wasn't here to make fun of you. So
Had a co-star.
On the way here, or earlier today, I was driving around with the kids, and we were listening to the podcast we did. I think it was it was Stephanie Puzo, and that was the day of the Gertzberg Law Firm holiday party, and we were regaling about how Molly, during Cards Against Humanity, got, her card said leprosy, and she goes, "What does leprosy mean?"
Every episode we talk about it.
and it was at the Paris Room, right? So it was a French restaurant, and we were like, "Oh, you mean leprosy?" Oh God, that was hilarious. Anyway.
And on that note,
Yeah. I have at my house a big poster of the dude standing in front of the tank at Tiananmen Square.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you know that picture, that image?
Yep.
It's iconic. And I draw inspiration from that dude. I think to myself, whenever I get stuck on anything, right? It stares me in the face, and I think this is a guy, and he's got his groceries, right? He's standing in front of a tank, right? And he's standing there at a time when they were opening up. They were lighting people up. They were, machine gun firing people in Tiananmen Square. He was ready to die, and all they were there for were to protest totalitarianism, right? To be able to speak freely.
Can you remember the video on television when that actually happened?
Vaguely, I remember.
Now that you say it, I do.
They didn't have any video.
What was so cool is that the tank was coming and he walked in front of it and stood there, and the tank
tried to get
moved
around it.
Yeah.
and he
walked,
would move to get in front of the
Yeah.
tank. He was not going to let that
Right.
tank.
Right,
He
that was
wasn't gonna
amazing.
let it pass.
Yeah. So this was awesome. Good podcast.
There were parts.
I loved
and now
it.
I have something that on you, leprosy.
Leprosy.
I didn't take French, so I have to work on my pronunciation.
Well, thank you, Brenda Cain,
Thank
for
you,
coming
Brenda
and hanging out with us.
Cain.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yes,
Molly
Brenda's
Gabler.
going off to the Cavs game.
Yes,
Right.
go
Okay.
Cavs.
Do you have good seats? Do you have the Cleveland.com box?
I do not. I'm
No?
up in the little corner, but I'm
I'm
there.
going to call Tim. I'm going to have a talk with him. It's just nonsense.
I know.
How do they not give you, the floor seats?
And her own column.
It's ridiculous.
One time I got the company seats to the Tribe game. If you know me, I'm
She's big,
like
big
the
Indians
biggest
fan.
Tribe fan ever, and I got to sit right behind home plate, and that was amazing to me.
Good stuff. All right. Anything else we want to say before we say goodbye to the kids at home, Molly?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
What about you, Alex? Welcome back.
Thank you.
We missed you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm honored that you came back for
Stop
me.
Thank you. It's nice to be back.
Yeah, he came back in multiple pieces.
I did. Splinter.
And then some.
Yeah.
Did you have to carry something on the plane that said you have metal?
No, and I didn't set off any metal. Apparently, the
Must have
titanium,
adjusted that.
7 titanium screws do not, and a plate. There's a plate in there. I would think that would do it. But
And you're
Teflon
sitting
coated.
here with your arms
Yeah.
up.
Teflon coated.
is that
I
right? Does
don't
that make
know.
it?
I kept looking at him the
You
whole
sounded
time.
like so authoritative. Man. All right, kids. Thank you for tuning in. This has
Thank
been
you,
lovely.
Alex Gertzberg.
Thank you, Molly Gabler. Thank you,
Will be
Brenda
amazing.
Cain.
Thank you.
Later.
See ya.